Hello from the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, which is home to one of the big traditions of the Fringe, which is flyering, when performers accost members of the public and try and convince them to come to their show by thrusting bits of paper with their faces into their hands. Anyone want to come and see News podcasts? Hello, would you like to come and see our podcasts?
Oh, hi.
Hello, how are you?
You're famous.
Anyone want to come and see the news? But it's kind of the news, but in a fun way. Come and see my podcast. Like, non-humans welcome. Who wants to come and see a news podcast being recorded? Lovely, thank you very much. Hello. Would you like to come and see our podcast being recorded? It's Newscast, it's number 1 on BBC Sounds. That's my face. I'm not gonna lie, that was surprisingly hard. And I already had respect for the people that do this all summer long, but that respect is now quadrupled or quintupled. And it's making me think I should stick to the day job, which is actually just making Newscast.
Newscast from the BBC.
He has just compared me to the Fat Controller.
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question. This is all for the benefit of Earth.
I'm not personally a huge Sabrina Carpenter fan. I don't think I'm being rude. I like landscapes.
Take me down to Downing Street. Let's go have a tour. Blimey.
Live from the Edinburgh Fringe.
Hello, it's Adam on the Newscast stage at the Edinburgh Fringe, and I'm joined by some very enthusiastic newscasters who are in the audience who've come to see us. Thanks for coming. And we here in the auditorium saw a little video version of me flying, and it's made me realize I need to work on my resting accordion face, don't I? I did not look very impressed, even though it was very good. And yeah, I do have newfound respect for the people who do the flying. Right, the good news for everyone watching this and listening is this is not a one-man show. I'm going to be joined by some friends of the podcast who will help us understand some of the news stories that are going on in the world today, and also to bring the festival really to life. So please welcome back. He's putting in quite a shift for us this week. It's the BBC Scotland editor, James Cook. Hello, James. Come on. Hello again.
Hello.
Hello. We will give you a microphone that works, yes. And now I'm very pleased our other guest today, and I sort of teased the audience that she might be here yesterday, and she got an amazing response. So please put your hands together for Kirsty Wark. Welcome.
I think you should give a big shout out for your host, Adam Fleming!
No, I'm famously modest. Now, the condition that you gave us for coming on is that we plug your program.
Yeah. So
take it away.
7:15 tonight, front row, make it happen. Brian Cox is on.
Oh, him again.
Yeah. The Bengsons are on, who are a wonderful singing duo, and we have 2 comedians, and we've got a wonderful, wonderful trumpeter. So please, obviously, pay a lot of attention to Newscast, but also to front row.
And which will also be available on BBC Sounds.
It will be.
Now, this is becoming a bit of a theme this week, this play about the Royal Bank of Scotland and Fred Goodwin, Make It Happen. I actually overheard some people in our audience talking about it on the way in. You've seen it, haven't you?
Yeah.
I've still not seen it yet.
Yep.
Is it a blockbuster?
Look, I think James Gray's a brilliant writer, and I think you will really thoroughly enjoy it. I think that Sandy Grierson really is a star playing Fred Goodwin. He's just brilliant. And Brian, obviously, as you know, comes on as the ghost of Adam Smith. What I like, there's a wonderful actor called Anne-Louise Ross, and she plays part of the Furies, one of those annoying people that go to shareholder meetings, try and get the truth out of things. And I want her to give I'd like another scene with her in it. I think she's so brilliant.
Just Kirsty giving some notes. And now, yesterday's newscast, I trailed the fact that you're going to be on this stage in a few weeks with the Smack the Pony crew, the sketch comedy ladies.
Who loved Smack the Pony when it was on?
Yeah, me. Loved it.
It should never have been canned.
I mean, it was a product of its time as well, though, and it's also it's like Fawlty Towers, isn't it? You don't want too much of a good thing, do you?
Yes.
Okay.
There's so many things around that are not good.
Yeah, true. What is the format going to be of that event? Because it's a reunion.
Well, it's going to be
isn't
very,
it?
very exciting. I can't reveal too much. But they're going to do some of their classic sketches. And then I'm meant to be interviewing them about their careers, and then other things will happen.
Okay. And then are there other things you've seen in the Fringe that you've been excited by?
Yeah, I tell you what I am going to see, which I'm very excited by, is I am going to see Johnny McKnight in She's Behind You, which is he's done with John Tiffany, because Johnny is the ultimate dame, and that's on at the Traverse. Obviously, I mean, you have to a disclaimer.
James is taking notes.
Yes.
He's just planning his social
I'm
life.
doing the notes I should have done earlier about other things we're going to talk about. If I'm honest.
actually taking
Oh my
revision.
God, that's what you're going to eat tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, if you get a chance to get a ticket, please, although I've come off the board of Scottish Ballet, but I have to declare I've been on it. Mary Queen of Scots, phenomenal. Okay. So that's going to be absolutely fantastic. So if you get a chance, that's the Festival Theatre.
And can I ask just a logistical question about the Fringe? Not
We're in Edinburgh.
Not like directions. But, I mean, I've only been here for 3 days, and I'm quite tired already. Yeah.
Are you?
How do you kind of approach it? How do you manage it? How do you make sure you don't just end up being like a husk?
I love the buzz of it. So you get I don't do 6 shows. We don't do that for front row. But when we were doing, there was a time when the BBC did an hour of arts every night. I know you may think it was in the 18th century. But anyway, we used to
have
think
the real Adam Smith on.
we had a show called Edinburgh Nights, and we knocked the shit out of the Edinburgh Festival. But actually, we do a lot on radio now, which is fantastic. And so I manage it by just seeing 3 or 4 things a day. And I try to keep away from crowds, which, as you know, in Edinburgh is completely impossible, because what people lose when they come to Edinburgh during the festival is any spatial awareness whatsoever. You know those big things on the Royal Mile, those metal things you walk through? I'm trying to get through, and 8 people in a family group are trying to get through together. I'm going, hello, and they just trample you over. I've been run over by wheelie cases.
How dare they?
I know.
How dare they?
I know. I've been banged by cameras going off people's shoulders. I mean, it's disgraceful.
I find, I came up the high street earlier as well, and I find that people, they're in like a daze. They're like, oh, we're going to see this now. Turn on your heels, smack into everyone who's nearby.
Exactly.
I very much sympathise with you. But also, when Adam and the Newscast team were saying, it's you and Kirsty on Wednesday, I was like, oh, that's lovely, that'd be really nice. And I thought, Kirsty is the festival, really, isn't she? Edinburgh Nights, for me, I remember you. You're, honestly,
And
you're
you
so
were allowed
associated
to
with
stay
the
up
festival.
that late.
Well, I'm not that young. Do you know I've been a journalist more than 30 years? It's frightening.
I
Frightening.
know, but you've also been up chimneys.
Yeah, well, that's true. Sometimes at the same time.
Can I say, in the defense of the people dawdling, maybe not the people
They're
attacking
not
you with their
dawdling.
but it's because there's so many posters and things. You end up getting distracted. You're like, oh, I could go and see that, and then you look down to see what time it's on, and then you get distracted by another show, and then you're not aware of other people around you. There's just like it's all the quality culture that's on offer. Distracts you.
I would say the other thing, because I don't think we've talked about this yet this week, because, I mean, it is fabulous, the festival. Of course it is. It's amazing. We're all here. Everyone's here. Everyone's enjoying it. Presumably you're enjoying it, or I hope you're enjoying it. Are you enjoying it? Yes.
Until
good.
now.
Until now. It was all right until now. Yeah.
But at least you're not paying to come and see this.
Exactly. But that's what I was going to say. But also, there is a problem in terms of there's nowhere to stay.
Nope.
You can't get a hotel for, Premier Inn for, 300 quid a night. People who are performers, who are struggling, who are young, I feel, you see them in the street, honestly, so people handing out flyers, and I was like, oh, there's more people handing out flyers. You've got to feel for some of these young people, like pouring their heart and soul out. And they're here.
And for audiences sometimes of 4.
Audiences of 4, but also literally a woman talking to the BBC the other day saying she's sleeping in her car because she simply can't afford anywhere to stay at the festival. And that's before you get into the housing problem for Edinburgh more generally and whether or not the city is even affordable the rest of the year. There's a huge housing crisis, and it's really highlighted during the festival.
I mean, if they would do something radical, which would be to allow to tent the meadows. Something
Which is kind of the park in the centre of town.
Which is the park in the centre of town. Why not tent the meadows, allow that for the festival, and actually, a company puts the tents up of a certain standard, and you can rent tents out. I mean, they need to do something.
Newscasters, you've just seen a news story being born. Kirsty Wark comes up with an idea for solving the accommodation crisis. I can imagine that being written up. Good. You can go now. Right, okay, let's talk about some of the things that have caught our eye in the news today. My favourite story that I've seen today is on the BBC News website, and it's from Yorkshire, and it's about a Labour MP called Mark Sewards, who has set up an AI chatbot of himself so his constituents can interact with him. We're now going to show you a little clip that our colleague James Vincent has filmed with the chatbot. And do you know what? I'll let you come to your own conclusions when we just listen to this.
I'm AI Mark Sewards, Labour MP for Leeds South West and Morley. How can I help you today?
Oh, hello, Mark. I'm James from BBC Look North. I just wondered about how ethical having a AI MP was.
Hello, James. Thank you for your question. The use of AI in politics can raise important ethical considerations, including transparency, accountability, and representation.
Well, I wonder, is this a way of you not speaking to some of your constituents?
I can assure you that my aim is to enhance communication, not replace it. This AI platform allows for quick access to information and assistance.
But let's talk about politics. How well has the Labour government done on its first year in power?
I'm not able to provide an evaluation on the Labour government's performance in its first year in power at this time. Noted.
This is weird, isn't it?
It's fantastic. I love it.
That's very well done, isn't it? It's very well done.
It's brilliant. I mean, presumably he won't go to Westminster anymore. He'll just send the chatbot.
Well, and sit in the House of Commons, just a lot of androids in the House of Commons.
Yeah.
I think the thing that got me there is the pause before each answer, and that is what. But also the other thing that gets me, they talk about this thing, the uncanny valley, which is when things that are fake are almost too real. And so the thing is there, like the actual things it says and the voice simulation is sort of weirdly convincing, but also it's not convincing at the same time.
But we now know the AI, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal that the AI can go rogue very easily. And it was somebody was testing out an AI company they were using. So what they did was they sent an email saying, I think we should really consider changing our AI provider. And, it's been really tough for me as an engineer recently because I don't know if you know, but I'm having an affair. So what happened was the AI came straight back and blackmailed him.
Really?
Yeah, it's you heard it here on Newscast, but it's in the newspapers.
Right, okay. I think the thing about it that gets me there is that he's actually trying to do a noble thing, isn't he?
No.
Wait, no? No, isn't there like good intentions there? It's like giving up people other ways to reach their... Because like an MP, they're a human being. They've got limits on their time. They can't respond to everything all the time 24/7. This is a way of like broadening his availability, isn't it?
Well, one thing you could say is, does that Labour MP capture everything that's sent to the chatbot and then actually interrogate it properly, or is that a way of not having to deal with it at all?
Interesting. Also, the other thing that's noble is I think it's a local company, so it's not like OpenAI in California, like one of the big trillion-dollar companies. I think he's actually doing it to promote a local business. Not sure how many customers they'll get on the basis of that, but worth a try.
I mean, I do think if the AI cannot provide any evaluation of the Labour government, what exactly is its utility in a political sense?
Yes.
It does seem...
Yeah.
Surely, if you're going to be well, maybe, I don't know. If I'm honest, I don't really know this MP in person. I'm sorry to say I'm not familiar with his work.
But you'll know him from that picture from now on.
Well, I will now. But, presumably, it's not that hard for the AI to say, I defend the actions of the Labour government, or maybe it is. Never mind.
Kirsty, I'm going to set you a bit of homework because I'm going to ask you to go through your personal archives. Interviewing politicians, do you remember a time, or interviewing anyone, where there was a massive pause that spoke volumes? Can you remember a time? Oh, can you remember it now?
Yeah, no, I can remember a time, it was about immigration figures, and it was the Home Office Minister, I can't remember. Beverly Hughes rode a motorbike, wore a lot of leather. Wore leathers, on a motorbike. And she gave the wrong figures. And I tell you, that was a big pause. But then the bigger pause was she was sacked after. So I think marshalling the facts before you go on is probably quite wise for a politician.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one that was interesting to me about how people end up in their own silos now with the information that's delivered to them by algorithm and reinforces your prejudices and your bias and your perspective and just generally affirms what you already think and maybe pushes you further in that direction. It's, you know, a well-known, well-discussed phenomenon of the digital age. And I was interviewing a protester outside Donald Trump's golf course in Aberdeenshire just, you know, the other week when he was there. And she made her case and she said, you know, this is a total disgrace. This golf course is a disaster. It's been terrible ecologically and the whole thing's awful. I said to her, well, Donald Trump, I suppose, would, in response, would probably say to that, well, it's providing a lot of jobs. Big pause. Uh-huh. I said, well, I'm just putting the counter case to you. She said, why? I was like, it's actually quite a revealing moment. I was like, because that's how it works. It's like, and I thought, and I don't mean to disparage this person, and maybe she just misunderstood what I was saying, in fairness to her, but it did strike me that she was not in a world where that was really happening to her very much anymore.
Yeah.
The challenge was not something she was. She said, what's your point? I was like, well, my point is I'm just making this devil's advocate.
Yeah, well, it's the ability to argue the other side as well. I mean, I don't know if this still happens, but I'm sure you all did this at school, which is you're in the debating society, and an hour before you're due to go on, you get your side of the argument, and no matter whether you think of it or not, agree with it or not, you have got to marshal the best argument. Now, you probably cancelled for doing that now if you were doing something against what you actually believed. But it was a great way of learning how to argue.
I did a lot of that.
Why does that not surprise me?
Doesn't know. Were you in the debating society at school, Kirsty?
I debated at school, yeah.
Would you be on the winning side most of the time?
It's too long ago for me to remember.
Very modest.
But it is a thing. Scottish schools, like the debating society, debating is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie Kenny was a brilliant debater.
Former Lib Dem leader.
Pardon?
You mean Charlie Kennedy, former Lib Dem leader?
Yes, Charlie Kennedy. He was a phenomenal debater. And my husband used to debate against him at Glasgow. And Alan said he was so sharp, so fast, so good. And I think that ability to step outside and do something out of your comfort zone like that is phenomenal.
Should we? No, I'm not going to set up a debate now.
No.
Yeah, and also you said you got an hour's notice. So it wouldn't be fair to give you like 4 seconds.
This house believes.
Yeah, exactly. Right, we've had a question from J.E. in the audience. How much of the daily podcast show is scripted? I think,
what do you think?
J.E., I think you've got your answer.
What?
And then they go on, and how much of it is improvised, given that you seem to be chatting to colleagues yet responding to world news events? I think the answer to that is that we've all been and are reporters, and actually when you're a reporter, your job is to just be able to talk about the story that you're looking at, and so I think that's the key to Newscast.
I mean, there is another way to look at that question. A less flattering way is, why do you all talk so much nonsense? It's just you guys, and guys and ladies sitting here talking rubbish. That's what it is.
I'm going to do an AEI-style pause. Just for full awkwardness. Right, okay, we've now got another question. It's from Jules, and it's about a news story. Jules says, what are your thoughts on whether Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, will have to amend her fiscal rules ahead of this autumn's budget or raise taxes as part of that budget? I suppose the context of that story is this economic think tank today saying, oh, the black hole, as it were, in the nation's finances is going to be about £50 billion come the budget in the autumn. So that means, cutting spending or raising taxes and potentially breaking election pledges.
For working people, as she calls them. I mean, everybody that works presumably is a working person. Anyway, you lead on this because you know the facts.
Well, do I? No, so this is a warning, as Adam says, from the National Institute of Economic and Social Research today, which is just highlighting what many think tanks have highlighted before, but perhaps even more extreme in the analysis of today, of this precise moment, of the challenge that Rachel Reeves has. That I think we all know she has. We're living in a country, it's pretty obvious that there are problems in terms of raising enough revenue in an era, not just a year or two, but I mean, we're talking now right back to the financial crash, an era of flat, low, or zero growth, effectively. And that's just such an enormous challenge to be able to do that. And we're now hearing that the pledges that Labour has made in terms of those fiscal rules, as the question rightly says, and in terms of taxes, have constrained her so tightly that she is struggling to find ways to raise enough revenue.
Yeah, and so but the question about that is, if a government has this flagship policy, and no matter what, because they've got forecasting and everything else, and we can't get productivity up, we can't grow the economy sufficiently, if that government then ditches that flagship policy, is that government credible?
What flagship policy are you talking about? Growth, economic growth, or
No,
the
no,
tax
I'm talking
the
of
tax pledge. Yeah.
And actually, more minor. I can remember at I think it must have been the 2023 Labour conference. The idea was that she's going to be the first chancellor who was a woman, and she stood up and she got this pelting, fabulous applause when she says, "We're going to get the non-doms," or not quite like that, but yeah, and now they're rowing back from that. And the reality is that since that policy became clear when they were actually out of government and it looked like they were going to win, 10,000 millionaires left the country in 2024. Now, you may disagree with non-dom policy, but the truth of the matter was they spent money, they made money, and now they're watering that down as well. And that was much more of a moral thing for them. So the question is, where was the unintended consequence planning?
Sorry, Adam, I was just going to say, one of my observations of this, which is a sort of wider critique of reporting and of our political space, is that I sometimes think we are parochial to a degree in terms of considering what is going to happen. So to take the example of the wealth tax or the non-dom policy, capital is mobile in the interconnected, globalized world. And the owners of capital, who have the most resources, are also mobile. And we naturally think, well, we have to focus on our political system in this country, whether that's the Scottish Parliament or the UK Parliament, and the solutions...
Welsh Parliament.
Or indeed in Northern Ireland, absolutely. Because we're here, but that's exactly a good point. But the point is that we think about our political systems. But if you take a step back, it's very difficult to talk about the unintended consequences of a wealth tax policy or a non-dom policy without considering whether or not there needs to be some sort of alliance of nations to deal with the issue of where that capital is going to vanish off to when one country presses a button individually. I'm not making any political argument at all. I'm just saying there are some people, particularly on the left, who would say one nation alone in a world where capital is exceptionally mobile, can't actually find the solutions to fund its public services well enough unless there's some sort of international push to do so. And it's hard to discuss that because we discuss our political framework and our political system, but I'm just saying I think sometimes the answers are much bigger, which your point hints at.
Which is my point. And the point was that was a 157% increase on exit than the previous year. That's massive. That is massive.
And just on the budget choreography and all the numbers, I mean, we see this every single time, that lots of different think tanks make lots of different assumptions about the public finances and then come up with a headline number for this is the amount that Rachel Reeves is going to have to raise, and you'll see other think tanks coming up with other numbers in the next few months. What really matters is what the Office for Budget Responsibility say, and as we know, they change their estimates of how the economy is going to look on a sort of weekly basis while Rachel Reeves is writing the budget. And do you remember when the welfare changes were being discussed, and actually they had to, like 2 days before the spring statement, come up with some more welfare savings because the kind of real-time calculations by the OBR had told them something else. So I would it's interesting to see the thought experiment that NISA have done today, and it gets the conversation going, but you've got to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. Not to say that they're wrong, but just say it's based on assumptions. Right, let's talk about another subject now. And this is, I was telling the audience earlier on, they're allowed to react if they hear something controversial. We're going to talk about MasterChef. Because the new series of MasterChef is on tonight.
The first 3 eps are already on iPlayer.
Have you watched them?
No.
No. Now, Kirsty, you've been quite involved in this story.
Yep.
Do you want to just remind people about your experience of this?
Well, what happened was that a number of people had complained, but the people that had complained were not in a position to say anything other than anonymously, because it's a very, as you know, insecure freelance industry, and people could just not get the next contract for whatever reason. Nothing is clear. And so when all these people had come, and a very good job had been done at the investigations unit in the BBC by Noor and other journalists, the BBC lawyers said, this is really tricky because nobody has actually spoken to camera. And at the time I'd spoken out to the executive producer at the production company, and I'd been quite clear to friends as well in the BBC and outside, not reporting it, but just talking about what happened, and it was a really unpleasant experience at times, not all the time. And so I just said, well, if it'll get it over the line, then obviously I would do an interview, but it wasn't, nothing happened to me that was of anything like, you know, I was witness to sexualized language, all that kind of stuff, but some of the things that have since come out are really very, very difficult for people. And the fact that it went on for so long is very difficult for people, and that nobody was really riding to their rescue.
And there was then this process where the production company, which was actually a production company that had bought the previous production company, which had bought the previous production company, they did this review. They got some lawyers to do a review. We haven't seen it. You haven't seen it either.
I haven't seen the whole report either.
All we got was a summary, and then that led to Gregg Wallace is not going to be coming back for this show, and then the spin-off from that was John Torode was also sacked as well. How do you feel about that process that's been gone through?
I think the process has been right. And I think that you all as licence fee payers would expect the best of the BBC in making sure that when this stuff happens, it's tackled. And I have no reason to think they did know about it at the BBC. I think the problem is that sometimes if a production company is very successful and gets going, then they just go on, they get going, and perhaps the oversight, well, now they've said there will be more oversight of production companies, but there's also going to be it's not just a whistleblowing policy, there's going to be a proper policy of reporting when there's bad behaviours. Because otherwise, who will trust the BBC? You know, who will trust the BBC to be either at arm's length or indeed in the building a good employer?
Do you mind if I ask a question, Kirsty, which is, in your experience as a stalwart of the BBC for many, many years, has this sort of thing improved in any way? The way you're treated as a woman now compared to at the start of your career, and you and your other female colleagues, has the culture changed?
I'm not ducking this one, but I felt that I didn't ever suffer from any, because I came in at a time when they needed more women, and then I became a producer and they needed more female producers, then they needed more people on the radio and the television who were women, and then down south they needed more variety of voices. So I rode waves, I'll be honest, but I know that other women had real tough times. And I think that overall, I think the BBC does do a pretty good job now, to be honest, and I am a wholehearted supporter of the BBC. But I think on this, they've got to be shown to be doing something that will actually matter for all these people. And I think the problem was that Banerjee, who are the overarching company now, did the report. Now, Dame Helena Kennedy is involved in an organisation which wants that to become independent reporting, and I think that is a really good idea. And you can't mark your own homework.
And what do you think about the fact that the series will be on BBC One tonight with Gregg Wallace and John Torode in it?
It's going to be heavily edited. I know the argument is that for the contestants, that's really what they want, because they can't rerun the show and do it all again. I think, though, for people that felt that they weren't heard at the time, if they did speak up, and that people who have been involved, I think it's very tough. So I think the BBC's got a very hard decision to make on this, but the one clear thing is that neither of these people is going to be involved in a BBC programme again.
Gregg Wallace is at the heart of this, and when this all blew up, he said a quite controversial comment about you and the other people who'd complained. So let's just remind ourselves about what he said, and then I'll get you to react to that.
In the newspaper, I can see the complaints coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age just from Celebrity MasterChef. This isn't right.
No, it wasn't right. It was a handful. It was a tsunami. The insult in that is phenomenal. I love it. A middle-class women, so that means that, kind of aristocratic women and working-class women and all sorts of other women, they didn't care. He got it so wrong. And the thing was, apparently, he'd been told by his handlers just to keep his head down. Well, that worked.
And there
were T-shirts. I was given T-shirts with it on. Everything is hilarious.
I mean, he's since reflected on that
He
and
did.
said I think his phrase was he wasn't in a good headspace
No, and
when he recorded that video.
I think he apologized as well to all the other women.
Though it's interesting, though, because I'm just thinking back to what you said about how the story actually came out, that it was you going public allowed the BBC to tell everyone else's story.
Yeah, because
it was your prominence that sort of got the
No, it
story
was
out
my
there.
privilege. I mean,
Yeah.
it was my privilege in the sense that I was in a privileged position at the BBC. You know, so what kind of person would I be if I hadn't done that when I knew that the complaints were piling up? You know, I cannot tell you how difficult it is for young people, particularly in the television industry, because it is such an insecure place. And month-to-month contracts getting canned, programs getting canned. You know, it seems the glamorous world of television, but I think for people who are in the ranks, it's very tough. So when people in the ranks see somebody actually being called out for what they did, it really, really matters. Not by me, I'm saying called out generally and dealt with. It really matters to them.
And just on a personal note, when you've presented the news for so long and then you listen and watch the news and you're the news, what's it like?
Fish and chip paper. No, I mean, I'm not really, to be honest, and I haven't spoken about this in detail or anything, and nor will I, because that's not the important thing. The important thing is that it's been dealt with. But the thing is, the important thing too, is that these scandals cannot be allowed to fester. I mean, we're not talking about an isolated instance, and I can remember hearing stories when I was much, much younger, joined a BBC, of things that were happening to other people from other so-called celebrities. Well, we know, obviously, some of them. So it's not an isolated thing. So it has to be a kind of culture change.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to make the story all about you. I was just intrigued to see what it's like as a journalist then becoming the news story. In terms of the news today on this story, Lisa Nandy, the culture secretary, was interviewed on the BBC earlier, and she was asked if she's going to watch MasterChef. And let's have a listen to what she said.
There have also been questions as well, haven't there, about whether the new series of MasterChef should be aired after the presenters left or were told to leave. I think the new series has just been released on iPlayer this morning. Is that right? Should it be shown?
It's absolutely not for me, as the Culture Secretary and a member of the government, to tell broadcasters what they can and can't broadcast.
What about as a viewer? As a viewer and a licence fee payer, I assume. Do you think it should be shown?
No, as a viewer, I won't be watching it. Be absolutely clear about that.
Would you normally have watched it?
So I've watched MasterChef on and off over the years, but I certainly won't be watching this series.
Because of what's happened with Wallace and Torode?
Yeah, I mean, like every member of the public, I'm absolutely appalled that was allowed to happen in plain sight for far too long.
I suppose there isn't a parallel universe where we knew if Lisa Nandy was going to watch this series anyway, because that's by her own admission, she sometimes didn't watch it. So is she taking credit for something she wasn't going to do anyway? We shall see.
Only you can work that one out.
But you're not going to watch it, are you?
No, I won't be watching it. I'll be on the train apart from anything else.
Hang on, that's a Lisa Nandy-ish answer. That's saying you're not available to watch it rather than choosing not to.
I will not be watching it.
Okay,
I will not be watching
just to
it.
get clarity.
I really, really feel sorry for the contestants in that show. Can I tell you, it's a tough show. It's a very, very tough show. It's a great show and it's an exacting show. And I would say for a good 6 months after I did it, I was a really, really good cook. And then
the same dish over and over.
And then I went back to being what I call a kitchen cook.
We've had a question in the audience from Beth, and she says, why did it rely on individual victims reporting? These things were visible to hundreds of staff working on the show. Kirsty, what's your take on that? And also, I'm just thinking...
Same thing. It's freelance industry, you know. And also, I'll be honest with this, you know, some people don't care about that kind of banter. I'm not saying that the crew of MasterChef did, but it was unpleasant. It was unpleasant. And the thing was, I think that when people behave like that, it's because they think they can. And it's about power as much as anything else.
I was going to say that as well. There's definitely a thing in our industry of a power dynamic, of what is, you know, somewhat ironically referred to as the talent. You know,
we're not allowed to call it the talent anymore, are we?
I know, but you know, Yeah, it was, I think, originally, I don't think it was originally coined as a flattering term anyway. I think it was coined as an ironic description of the people presenting the programs by the people who were doing the running on the programs, if I'm honest. But, I mean, the point is, it is a particular, I mean, all businesses have a hierarchy. Of course they do in a structure, but because of the nature of celebrity being involved, I do think that our industry has a particular, and I mean the wider broadcast industry as opposed to news, which is what we are primarily involved in, the three of us. But I do think there's a particular problem there with untouchable stars, and that partly answers that question of why would even a middle-ranking person on that show not do anything? Because it's the talent, so-called. It's the senior person. It's the celebrity. It's just another layer of problem before you go after them. I mean, loads of people don't want to report their boss for something. You know, that's been a problem since time immemorial. But the celebrity aspect, I think, makes it so much. It shouldn't make it harder. Of course, it shouldn't. It's ridiculous. But it definitely exists.
Many years ago, there was, and I'm not going to say who it was, but it was a star, and people were told, if you're in the corridor with the star, don't look at them.
Who was it?
Don't look at them because they didn't like eye contact from subordinates.
I have no idea.
A male star, presumably.
I'm sorry. That was that. That was the kind of meager morsel of that story.
What is interesting, though, and you might not know this because if you don't work at the BBC, like we've now got this thing...
Or maybe you do.
We've got this thing called Call It Out now they've introduced as a result of the big review into like the organisation culture that they did. And there's like Call It Out lanyards, Call It Out pens. We actually at the Newscast office got a bunch of Call It Out T-shirts delivered the other day there. And it's interesting because it's quite easy to take the mickey out of stuff like that. And it's got like a little Call It Out logo. But you can see what they're trying to do there is change a culture. Yeah. And I always heard that phrase. I thought it was a bit of a jargony buzzword phrase. But now that I've seen an example of how you change a culture, what that is trying to do is to make everybody on the same team so that actually it's not, and it's back to Beth's question, so that it's not down to a victim or a survivor or a complainant, whatever you want to actually take the initiative to seek justice. It's actually you involve everyone in the process so that bad behavior isn't tolerated collectively. And you have to do that through mad things like lanyards and mugs and T-shirts, because that's how you change a culture.
Yeah, and caps.
I don't know if we've got caps.
There is an argument that perhaps the unions, the National Union of Journalists and BECTU, the two main unions in the BBC, might advance, which might be that is shifting or attempting to shift responsibility to the staff and away from the management for this behaviour. I'm not necessarily making that argument. I'm just saying that is a counter-argument to that. I mean, of course, if you want to change the culture, everyone has to be involved in that. But hand in hand with requiring or compelling or
got to be
persuading the staff to report things, there has to be a confidence in the process that will follow if they are reported.
I'm not for 1 second suggesting the BBC is replacing HR with a pen and a cup and a T-shirt. But
aren't you, though?
No. Right. Anyway, so if you see me wearing the lanyard, that's what that's about. Right, let's talk about something completely different. Scottish Parliament elections coming up next year. James, give us some kind of big thoughts about what we should be thinking about over the next year or so, even though it's actually in May, so it's less than a year.
At the time of the next elections, as I'm sure many people in this Edinburgh audience know, the Scottish National Party will have been in power in Edinburgh, running the devolved government, which primarily looks after domestic affairs such as health, education, increasingly taxes to a certain degree, and some benefits and so on, for nigh on 2 decades. Quite an extraordinary record for any political party to have been in power for that long. And yet, there are self-evidently considerable problems with the state of public services in Scotland, as indeed there are with the state of public services in other parts of the United Kingdom, and as discussed earlier, in terms of the struggle to get enough taxation in to provide high-quality public services in the modern world, as there are in other Western democracies. So the SNP are in this curious position where they're under pressure for their performance, and yet they still are doing pretty well in the polls. They had a really bad general election. They fell back. Labour went from 1 seat in Scotland to 37. The SNP fell back from 48 to 9 seats at the general election. And yet, since then, Labour in the polls have slid down, and now they're polling round about 20%, round about a fifth. And the SNP have stabilised and are polling round about a third. And so it is not inconceivable that after the next Holyrood election, the SNP could, perhaps as a minority, perhaps in coalition, stay in power. I'm not saying at all, it's not a prediction, I'm not saying that'll definitely happen, but it is pretty remarkable after 2 decades. And underlying all of this is the constitutional question. It's gone quiet, the question about independence, in the last couple of years, but it's still there, but more than bubbling under the surface. And audience members here, I'm sure, will have their own view one way or the other, or maybe there's one person left in the whole country who's neutral on this issue, but you know, lots of people have a view. But independence is still polling around 50%, and that, because the unionist vote remains fragmented between, you know, Labour, the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats, and interestingly and increasingly Reform UK in Scotland, the SNP still now manages more or less, not entirely, to hold on to the bulk of that pro-independence vote, and so that carries them on. I'm not saying it's the only reason. There's other reasons why people vote for the Scottish National Party, but that is, broadly speaking, I think, where we are. You feel free to disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I would really like to hear something from the audience on this. I think it's...
We can't afford the microphones.
Okay.
It's all on you, Kirsty.
But it is a real conundrum, because then you have this pretty stable vote for independence, but not necessarily via the SNP. I mean, it's kind of a very strange thing. But then how much of that is because the other parts are fragmented? How much of it is because John Swinney appears to be a strong member of strong and stable leadership? Who said that? Who appears to be just, you know, he seems to be somebody that people actually don't dislike massively.
He's certainly steadied the ship. I mean, the SNP were in a period of considerable turmoil at the end of Nicola Sturgeon's first ministership and under her chosen successor, essentially. I mean, the voters, the SNP members chose him literally, but he was her preferred successor, Hamza Yousaf. It went really badly wrong. They moved to the left on a lot of policies, both economically. They were very close to the Greens. There were a series of policies that were seen by a lot of business people in Scotland as being anti-business. These policies were embraced too by a lot of younger voters and people on the left, and there's a big split in the SNP among those. And also, most infamously, I think, on social policy, and particularly on gender, the SNP got themselves into a terrible pickle and ended up with a situation where the policy that they were trying to push forward has essentially been A, blocked by Westminster, and then B, ruled unlawful by the Supreme Court. And so John Swinney has tried to push all of that to one side and to ditch it and to get rid of it. They've moved away from the Greens. I mean, that wasn't his doing, but they have. And he's tried to stabilise things.
But the other thing was, and I might be wrong about this, but it seems to me, when you look at who's seen to be friendly to business, Nicola Sturgeon wasn't somebody with that kind of big drive for business, that business head, that, you know, supporting. I mean, I'd be very interested to see. I'm halfway through her book, and I've signed an NDA because I'm interviewing her at McEwen Hall across the road at the book festival. So I won't say anything about what's in it. But actually, if you were to talk about entrepreneurship, you know, John Swinney is much more likely, I think, to be talking about that as a leader than Nicola Sturgeon was.
Well, in that sense, though, the departure of Kate Forbes, who more than anyone else in the administration, the Deputy First Minister, who says she'll be standing down at the next Holyrood election next year, as Adam says, her departure in that sense is a blow to John Swinney. She is more than anyone in that cabinet identified with that pro-growth, pro-business wing of the SNP. There'll be some people in the party who are absolutely delighted to see the back of her, but she is also very popular. She came pretty close to winning, despite some, you know, missteps in her campaign.
I mean, it'd be very interesting because, you know, had she won, would she still be saying, "I'm not going to carry on"? You know, because the pressure would have been even greater than it is on people who live very far away from this Parliament and the way it's constituted. You know, the actual running hours, which were meant to be improved, and everything else, and. You know, I can understand her position. You know, she's got a young child who's 3 years old.
Because she says, family reasons are her principal reason. Adam, I was just sorry. I'm so sorry. Really quickly going to say, we can't only talk about this without mentioning the state of the Labour government and the state of the, you know, in terms of where we are heading into Holyrood. The missteps that the Labour government have made, the flip-flopping on policy, the unpopularity of some of their welfare policies, particularly in Scotland, has certainly contributed to their slide and the SNP's stabilisation as well.
That was a tour de force. I'll be dining out on that until next May. Also, I've been interviewing Nicola Sturgeon as well. And it's going to be on Newscast. I think we're going to drop it next Tuesday. And there's a rumour it's actually going to be on BBC Two as well.
Okay, give us a tidbit.
Well, I can't. It's embargoed, isn't it?
I was hoping to trap you.
Yeah, no. We're not on Newsnight now.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how interesting was it?
Oh, don't.
14,
Adam's going to say about 3 and don't bother watching. Not.
14. It's that you'll.
How did you snag that?
By the great Newscast team. They're putting in, we call them bids in the industry when you're trying to get interviews with people. They're putting in bids with all sorts of people. And then, because she's got a book to sell, she wants to come on the UK's favourite daily news podcast and the #1 podcast on BBC Sounds.
And did you do it in a locked room?
But it was a closed door. It was actually in the Newscast studio that once during the general election, me, Chris, Laura and Paddy got locked out of. And we couldn't get into the studio. And like 2 minutes, because it had an automatic locking thing on it, and there was a power cut, and it was stuck locked. Anyway, so I didn't get locked in with Nicola Sturgeon, but it was very, and it's like about an hour long.
So don't, I know you're not going to tell us what, but just very briefly. Was there anything that shocked you?
So many things. I mean, shock's not quite the right word, but like every answer she gave on every subject, there was something newsworthy in it, or something I hadn't heard her say before, or something that I was like, whoa, you're really saying that to me? Yeah. So I think if you want to call that shocked, yeah. Am I giving it the big sell?
Yes!
Anyway, 2 last questions, and they're both for me. Anonymous says, when are you going to shave off your moustache?
I didn't think I had to.
And Fiona says, do you always wear American flag socks when you're doing Newscast? No. But I've realised now that we're on YouTube every day, I do have to be careful about what socks I wear. I just like these. They're just quite colourful, aren't they? No?
It's not a secret message to Trump, is it?
Yeah, listen to my Nicola Sturgeon interview, then come on Newscast, Donald. Right, Kirsty, it's been great to catch up with you. Thank you so much.
Lovely to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And James, thank you for letting us pick your brains for another day.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you to everyone who's been here in the audience. Give yourself a round of applause. And thanks to you for listening to this episode of Newscast from the Edinburgh Fringe. We'll be back with another Edinburgh-themed episode very soon. Bye-bye.